Alright, buckle up children, we've got quite a distance to cover. This video contains spoilers for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, the Star Wars prequel trilogy, the Star Wars original trilogy, the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and Star Wars Rebels. I think that's everything. So let's get to it, because I watched Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus and I was really impressed by the lightsaber fights. Impressed and also emotionally moved. If you're new here, I'm Jill Bearup. I enjoy fighting people on stage for fictional purposes. Welcome. There are 3 Obi-Wan Darth Vader fights that we're going to discuss from the series. The first fight between Vader and Kenobi is in episode 3 of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and it is absolutely brutal. Before the fight, Anakin kills and maims a bunch of people, including kids, to draw Obi-Wan out, and Obi-Wan, who has only recently found out that Anakin is alive, is scared, and Obi-Wan is running. When he sees Darth Vader, when Vader ignites the lightsaber, he looks for his own lightsaber, and then nope. But you don't get away that easily. And when they finally do get into the fight, Obi-Wan is in constant retreat. Now it should be noted that his Mustafar fight with Anakin is also mostly retreating, except when they stand in one place and spin their lightsabers very carefully so as to avoid hitting each other, obviously. But this is different. Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith is patient and focused and desperately sad, but he will do what he must. And he may be moving backwards, but that's because his preferred lightsaber form is one where you let your opponent wear themselves out and you wait for the opportune moment, so to speak. It's called Form 3, Sarisu, if you're into that. He's also hoping, perhaps, that Anakin is going to come to his senses and stop, which may help to explain the times in the fight where he could have killed Anakin and just didn't. Obi-Wan at the beginning of the Disney Plus series is a man with no fight left in him. He hasn't quite gone total disconnection from the Force like Luke in The Last Jedi, but Obi-Wan still has little Luke to look after at least. But he is just so done with everything. The series revolves around the kidnap of little Leia and Obi-Wan's attempts to get her home safely. But everything is so hard for him, running and jumping and fighting and using the Force, it's all just so much effort now. So when we get here, the first time he has seen Anakin in 10 years, facing up to what Anakin has become when Obi-Wan is already a man with precious little hope or motivation or faith, it goes poorly. He's not, for example, a calm, focused Jedi Master trying to keep Vader's attention away from his children. He's a man facing a nightmare. All that hair in his face and his constant darting eyes looking around for a way out makes him look like a man who's trying to escape from a horror movie scenario rather than a Jedi Master in a duel. And that helps make the fight visceral and emotional and sad. To underline the power disparity, Vader pretty much only fights with one hand during this fight, which is something that he canonically does when he's not really trying to kill the other person, or at least he's not trying to kill them right now. See Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi for examples of this from pre-existing canon. Vader's goal here is not to kill Obi-Wan, not immediately, it is to make him suffer, and suffer he surely does. It's not a long fight, but it is a psychologically intense one. The sheer force, pun intended, I guess, of Vader's anger against Obi-Wan and the casual, deliberate cruelty of burning him and then just leaving him to marinate in his injuries for a while. Ouch. Of course, Obi-Wan does escape thanks to Tala and the loading robot, but it's very definitely a defeat for him. It's meant to feel hopeless and kind of humiliating. And it does. How far you have fallen, how much faith you have lost. We're right at the midpoint of the series here, and so everything is at its lowest ebb. But that's not the end. One thing to please note from this fight before we move on, because it will be important later, is Vader using his left hand to contemptuously force chuck Obi-Wan. Okay? Great, moving on. The second fight is actually a flashback which comes to us in pieces over the course of the episode. In this one, Obi-Wan is teaching his Padawan they're having a training fight, and in this instance Obi-Wan wins, though he does imply that that is not always the case.
Then maybe I stand more of a chance this time.
A running theme of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is that Obi-Wan and Anakin know each other really rather too well, even after all this time. They know what will draw the other one out, they know each other's weaknesses and psychological tics. But Obi-Wan has always been better at this than Anakin was. Now, the Padawan fight gives us an echo of a lot of the same kinds of phrases that we had in the Mustafar fight, and sets us up for the final showdown later on. Obi-Wan in a long retreat, getting backed into a corner, rescuing himself from that corner, losing weapons and getting them back again, and Anakin's general aggressive overconfidence. Note please, and this was just for fun, that hammering repeatedly on the blade of your opponent's lightsaber is something that seems to run in the family. In this fight we also get a callback kind of, to that scene in Attack of the Clones where Anakin is complaining to Padme, who he hasn't actually seen in 10 years, and he's taking this opportunity to vent. But anyway, about how Obi-Wan doesn't think he's ready for the trials, and how Obi-Wan is a big meanie. The criticism given specifically in the Obi-Wan Kenobi episode is not "you're too unpredictable," as Anakin says in Attack of the Clones, but "your need for victory blinds you." But it is a reminder that Anakin doesn't really take criticism that well. But anyway, the purpose of the flashback Padawan fight is to explain to you that Anakin has always been desperate for approval, something which Chancellor Palpatine will then exploit. It's also, if you've seen it, to remind you of the fight that happened on Mustafar and all that happened there, so that what happens next will seem more wondrous, or at least more emotionally resonant. Obi-Wan and Anakin's final reckoning in this series is a fight somewhere rocky. No Princess Bride jokes, please. And this fight isn't just the culmination of Obi-Wan Kenobi's arc over the last 6 episodes, but it is also that, so let's talk about that first. Obi-Wan starts out sad and hopeless, his connection to the Force is diminished as a consequence, and he struggles to do things which used to come easily to him. And now he has found a reason to get up and do things again, in the form of little Leia, but also watching the proto-rebellion try to help Force-sensitive people has perhaps given him some hope for the good of the universe. He has been able to find faith and hope and purpose again, and this means that he can stop just feeling things and actually start doing stuff. We've seen his return to form ramp up over the course of the series, obviously. He accurately predicts what Vader will do, he uses Reva against Vader, and so on. But the final fight is where it all comes together. Hey, remember in Star Wars Rebels, and yes, I told you we'd be ranging quite widely here, where Obi-Wan Kenobi beats Darth Maul with the power of psychology? Or possibly headology? No? Okay, let me give you a breakdown. Look, it me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Master of Form 3. Maybe I should take a defensive stance. Nah, actually that's boring. Swooshy swooshy, come and get me. Oh, okay, let me just meaningfully transition into the ready stance that I used when I was a Padawan, and the ready stance that was also used by my master right before you killed him. Remember him? Oh yeah, I do! Now I'm gonna kill you in exactly the same way I killed your master, haha! I think not. Actually. Maul, like Vader, never really managed to move on. As we see in the original trilogy, Vader never gets over this need to psychologically cow his opponents. Maul never gets over the need to avenge himself against the guy he blames for ruining his life, and that eventually costs him his life. Vader sees Obi-Wan, Sarisu stance activated, and while he maybe assumes that Obi-Wan is back up to his old strength again, he also assumes that Obi-Wan is going to fight him in the way that Obi-Wan historically has preferred to fight people. Very defensively. Maybe that's what we as the audience assume too. And then it doesn't happen. And it's marvellous. The first phrase we start off as usual with Vader taking the initiative, and side note, I do enjoy the cinematography. It's always nice to get pretty dramatic backgrounds, and also I do love an overhead shot. But also we have actual thrusting with the point of the lightsaber from Obi-Wan, and if you have ever seen him do this before, please leave a comment and tell me where, because it seems to be a relatively unusual thing for him. We call back to both Mustafar and the Padawan fight that they were having earlier in the episode with the back-to-back stuff. And can I also say that the combatants are generally less uncomfortably close together than they were on Mustafar, and I appreciate that. I just do. And then this straightforward lightsaber stance. Just stay away from me or I'ma stab you with my glow stick. It's a very straightforward sentiment. It's just such a different style from the one that we have previously seen from Obi-Wan, and it's necessary and also refreshing. We go away from them for a bit, and when we come back they're fighting in the rocks. And Obi-Wan is doing more stabbing because enclosed space, even one-handed sometimes, and he's rolling because Vader in a mech suit is obviously going to be much less maneuverable than Anakin Skywalker was. Good thinking, Obi-Wan. I knew you were the brains of this outfit. And then Force use with the offhand. Hey, remember how I said you should remember Vader's contemptuous Force pushing back in episode 3? Well, this is the beginning of the payoff for that. On Mustafar, Anakin and Obi-Wan do the Force push simultaneously. It doesn't really matter who initiates it because the other one has to do it in order to counter. And eventually, because they are matched in strength, they just go, wee! Last time Obi-Wan and Vader fought, Vader just moves his hand and wee! This time it's Obi-Wan who gets in with a Force push trying to drop a rock on Vader, which admittedly doesn't work, but
your strength has returned.
Yes, that is what we're going for here. But not just your strength, Obi-Wan. Your calm, your center, your ability to think. All of that is back.
But the weakness still remains.
Yeah, there follows a series of unfortunate events for Obi-Wan, because they fight some more with lightsabers, but then Vader is like, oh hey, yeah, Force pushing the environment around me, I can do that, and so rocks. Rocks. The ground splits open. Rocks fall, everybody dies. He obviously doesn't die, he just falls down a hole. But while he's fallen down the hole, 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Obi-Wan gets his mojo back. He blasts his way out with the Force, he sneaks up behind Vader, and we're on. Hey, remember how Vader sneaked up on him in the first fight? Presumably by holding his breath? Obi-Wan doesn't have to do that because he's not really noisy. Anyway, hand-swapping shenanigans, which is another echo of Mustafar where they'd like to do that a bit. And we get some awesome fencing-esque stances, and they use the Force to parry. And then a proper parallel to that Force push by Vader in the first fight. And then we're going to lift a bunch of rocks. And frankly, I love a good lifts a bunch of rocks scene. I do. These rocks are used as a weapon, and then there are more stabby shenanigans. I love it. And then they're holding each other's offhands to prevent Force use. And then Obi-Wan hits Vader repeatedly in the mechanical box with the hilt of his lightsaber. There is just so much relative novelty when it comes to lightsaber fights in this duel, and I love it. I mean, yes, there is obviously a lot of bashing your glow sticks together because that is required, but they have made a real effort to do other things like thrusting attacks, like using the Force with their offhands, like using their environment. Speaking of, there's more rock throwing, and then Vader makes a sound like an enraged chicken, or possibly an asthmatic giraffe, or possibly some other simile. You can leave it in the comments. Whatever it is, you can tell he's not functioning optimally. He gets hit across the back, he's Force thrown away again, and then Obi-Wan does this running jump and smashes the side of his mask. Hey, call back to Ahsoka and Rebels who did the same thing, but with the other side. And then the creepy half Vader, half Anakin voice, which is just perfect. Obi-Wan is emotionally wrecked by this, and possibly so are you. It's just such a beautiful scene, and given the interesting nature of some of the dialogue in the prequels, it's just really nice to have Hayden Christensen back and give him minimal dialogue and just trust him to do the acting thing. So that's always good.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
And I see what you did there. The thing about this fight is that it gave me a way to harmonize all of the Obi-Wan Kenobis. When they begin this fight, while it's mostly Vader initiating the phrases, Obi-Wan is still being very aggressive. In this fight, unlike on Mustafar, we actually trade off who is advancing and who is retreating. On Mustafar, Obi-Wan rarely tries to drive Anakin back like this. In the Padawan fight, there are a couple of times that Anakin just drives Obi-Wan back across the room, but Obi-Wan doesn't do that. He waits for his moment and he acts decisively, but in the past, he has always let Anakin set the pace. This is completely different to how it plays out in A New Hope, and this is why we need a bridge fight. When they start here, occasionally Obi-Wan initiates phrases, but even when he's not initiating phrases, he's being much more aggressive than we've seen before. He has switched to this more aggressive style because he knows he needs it to keep Vader off balance. And after he breaks out of the ground, almost all the phrases are initiated by Obi-Wan until the duel is done and Vader is broken. And so when we get to the duel in A New Hope, where Obi-Wan and Vader initiate phrases more or less evenly, it doesn't feel like such a disconnect from the Obi-Wan that came before. And I didn't realize how much this was something I wanted until I sat down to write this video. People ask me all the time what I think of the Mustafar fight, and I don't really know what to tell them. It's a very complex, fast-paced, fluidly choreographed, and mostly not too silly fight in a movie that's But the thing is, I'm not really the movie's biggest fan. It doesn't emotionally engage me in the ways I think that it should, and so by the time we get to this point in the movie, I'm just kind of done. But I actually feel much better about that fight now that I have this fight to bridge me from there to here. Before I watched the Obi-Wan series, one of my feelings about the Mustafar fight was that the jump from flashy spinning everything, constantly on the retreat, ducking and diving, look at me go, to episode 4, oh my aching everything, was just too jarring. And I know that canonically 19 years go by in the meantime, but I didn't quite believe it. Regardless of what else happened in the series, now that there is this bridge fight, I have a convincing emotional and stylistic through line from flashy spinny Obi-Wan to kind of losing the faith Obi-Wan to classic Alec Guinness Obi-Wan. And you know what? I'm here for that. If you fancy some more Star Wars fight analysis, you can check next to my face, and I'll see you next time.